Hello, Ian, and this is Ian's POV. I just want to have a general chat, really. I might waffle a bit. Ah, the way of the world. The weather's getting better. Now, I'm in a wheelchair. I don't walk very well. I can stagger with sticks, but it's hard work. I got a mobility scooter so I can get around the town. I want to go fishing. I haven't been fishing for about 4 years now. And I've been making fishing flies here. And if you go to Country Sports TV, you'll see some of the flies that I've made. I make my own fishing flies. Now, what happened was I worked in a gun shop. And I worked in a place called Crudgington's in Bath. It was on Green Street to start with, and then we moved round the corner to Broad Street. And in Green Street, this is 71, 72, you had the fishing department downstairs. And they did sea fishing, coarse fishing, and game fishing. So you had all sorts of rods, and when the kids in the shop didn't have any customers, they would sit there and make flies. Because they had to be productive. So the boss would say, just make some flies if you haven't got anything to do. In my workshop, you haven't got anything to do. You got the broom out and you did the sweeping in the workshop. So, and I used to be fascinated by this. Anyway, I moved to Bristol and I was running George Gibbs, the gun shop in Bristol. I did that for 4 years. And we also did fly fishing stuff, mainly for the lakes, but people that went on holiday and would go to Scotland, we also had salmon rods as well. So I had to learn about fishing. And people would come in who fished Blagden and True Valley Lake. Now, Blagden, this is the education bit, Blagden is the mother of all still water fisheries. It was the first one. And I know it's back in time. Back in the 1800s they did it. They needed water for Bristol and Weston-super-Mare. And they needed a lake up on the Mendip Hills. So they built a dam, filled it up with water. Now, one of the things you do in still water, if it's going to be used for drinking water for people, is you need some sort of biological test to make sure there's no pollutants within the water. And one of the best things to use, it is true, is trout. Rainbow trout. So they imported rainbow trout from America. And they started their own fishery, and they would milk the female fish and put the sperm from the male with it and mix it all up in a bucket. And they had like long concrete troughs with a little bit of a slope on it, so the water went in the top and came out down the bottom. It was recycled. Because fry, small fish, have got to have clean running water. And they would produce their own fish. That's why they had their own fishery. And they would then put those in the lake. Now, to start with, it was only the directors. Now, when I was in the gun shop in Gibbs's, we had fish, specimen trout, that were caught on Blagden in the 20s. And they were caught by the original directors of Bristol Water. And it was Bristol Water directors and invited guests. One of the guests used to be a major. And there was a black and white television program done on it. And I had a video of it. And I gave it to a friend and I never had it back. It was on VHS. But he would fish Blagden as a guest of the bosses. Now, Blagden is the mother of all fisheries. I was working in Gibbs's and we were basically selling stuff to people that fished Chew Valley Lake and Blagden. Fishing rods, we were a Hardy agent. So we sold Hardy rods. We also had Bob Church rods. And it was fascinating stuff. The boss was working and then not working. He was ill. So we was in and out. And like I said, I looked after the shop for 4 years on my own. The manager retired through ill health. Now, I then had to learn about fishing. So I got invited out fishing. I wasn't very good. I was crap, to be honest. I'd made my own rod. When I was in Crudgington's, the year before I went to Gibbs's, I made my own 9'7", not 9'7" inches, 9'7". 7 is the weight of the rod. And that was on a Bob Church plank. And they worked out where they marked it with white pen, where I had to tie the flies on. I had a machine to tie the flies and whip all the eyes on. And I was making rods. Wasn't fishing, but I had a rod. And I made one for myself. All I had to do was buy the bits, and I could make it. So I had a fishing rod, but never used it. And then when I went to Gibbs's, I was invited out fishing. I thought, yeah, brilliant. So I went fishing. I caught one or two, but it was like all day to catch one. It was not very good. So then I started writing for Countryman's Weekly. It was Shooting News at the time when I started writing for them, and then they changed the name to Countryman's Weekly. And I got invited to a press day on Blagden. Wow, I've never fished Blagden. I know, that's for the big boys. So I went down to Blagden, and we were partnered with like the senior members of Blagden and the fishery staff. And I was partnered with the captain of the England fly fishing team. He was good. I mean, he was absolutely incredible. And anyway, we got in the boat. I'd row, he'd row, we'd change over. We got on a spot. He knew where he was going. And he was explaining about wind lanes, and you might find a fish on it. And what happens is the wind blows, and it blows a line of food, and the fish feed underneath it. Also, you've got to find what is hatching out. So if it's caddis flies, which is like a little moth, or gnats, or we didn't have any mayflies, but if you're on the rivers up in Cirencester where I used to work, they had 2 weeks of mayflies, and they called it Duffer's Fortnight. But anybody that fished and put a mayfly fly on the end of the line could catch a fish. So I fished with this guy in this boat, and I ended up with 2 fish. And the guy's got 4 fish, and there's an 8 fish limit. And it's lunchtime. So we stopped, we had a break. We're in the middle of the pond. Well, this great big lake. And we had a cup of coffee, and we had a sandwich, and a pack of crisps, and a Mars bar. And he said, right, the fish might start feeding off the top now, or just underneath the surface. We'd been lure fishing and fishing underneath the water and stripping lures. He said, right, let's try and do some surface fishing now. And what we'll do is I'll use dry fly and you use a pheasant tail and just let it sink underneath the surface and bring it back up again. Just do that. And that's what we did. These fish were coming up and they were taking something just underneath the surface. And you could see it. They come up and they go along and they just, I'm not explaining, the fish would come up and then dip and go up and dip. And the trick that he explained to me was you've got to take the third one. Because you've got the line now, you've got two, and you know he's going that way, and you want to put your fly in front of his nose and just tweak it as if it's trying to get out of the surface. Anyway, I did this. He also taught me not to splash the water. Put the fly out and let it go down by gravity so that you don't splash the water. That was another lesson he taught me. So I did this and I right in the right place. And this fish came up and took it and the line went tight. Absolutely incredible. I learnt so much in that day. And he was dry fly fishing, and then he got me on to dry fly. And we had a wonderful time. I ended up with 4 fish, and he had his 8 by the time it was time to go in. But it was absolutely brilliant day. And I learnt so much. It got me going and started with fishing. I would then go out on my own. I was doing better. We had what was called the tanks. It was concrete basins. The water would come from Chew Valley Lake. It was piped into the tanks, and then it was filtered through sand for Bristol, for Bristol water. And I started to go up there. I'd go up in the mornings before work, and I'd go in on the way home at night. And like I said, there was an 8 fish limit. With the amount of money, I think it was about £8 for a day. Well, that was £1 fish. Well, I worked out that if I could catch 2 or 3 fish, that would be enough. And that would pay for it. Because I really wasn't that good. So I started fishing, and I caught a few fish. I'm not going to say it was brilliant by this time, mind. Then I started doing country shows. And I was a gunsmith, so I had my bench and I was playing with guns, normally checkering stocks, because you didn't really want to take guns around for security reasons. And with me was a guy called David Kemsley, sadly no longer with us. And we became mates. And he was a great fisherman. I would take him out shooting and he would take me out fishing. And we had a whale of a time for a few years. And he taught me the rest that I know. He was an incredible fisherman. And we used to do the lakes around Cirencester. And I went down with him to Exmoor Fisheries. Exmoor Fisheries taught me one thing. It's clear. I mean, it's crystal clear, the water. And I wear Polaroid sunglasses so I can see in the water so I don't get the glare. And it works brilliant. And you can see the shoaler fish. There's rainbow trout that go round on their own. And then they just do a circuit. Then you get some fish that hold up and then take stuff as it's passing. And then you get shoals of fish that go round. Anyway, there was a guy next to me who was splashing the water with his, like a whip. Anyway, the fish were underneath him, and all he had to do is just let the thing float down, because I'd learnt that before. But the fish went joink. and moved. So the fish moved over to my side. So I cast out, let it drop on the water, give it a little whittle. Fish came up, boom, boom. I said, thank you very much, mate. Anyway, we're down on Blagdon Lake with David. David had his waders on, and he would fish, what he said, fish the clock. You fish, obviously, 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock, you can't fish because that's the bank. So you fish 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And you fish and you go back to make sure there's no fish in front of you. Then you wade out in and then you do the clock again. This time you can do 6 and 3 as well. And that's what we did. Anyway, I was here. David was next to me. About 15 yards, I suppose. And then there was another guy 15 yards again. And he was almost up to his chest in water. He had chest waders on. And so he could get out more. He was way out. He was giving it stick, trying to get the line out as much as he could. Anyway, David went, psst, psst. And I looked, he said, anyway, looked at the guy. And where the guy was walking in the water, he must have been bringing stuff up. And there was fish feeding around him. They weren't out there where he was trying to fish. He was trying to cast 20, 30 yards. The fish were under his feet, all around him. And the fish were moving, and you could see all the ripples. I know David watched this for about 10, 15 minutes. And curiosity got the better of him. He tied a new fly on. He flipped it out behind this guy and went bang, and I found a 4.5 pound rainbow. You should have seen this guy's face. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, these are my fishing stories. It's not really my POV. It's just I like telling stories. I'm not going to say I'm good at it, but it's my story and I'm sticking to it. Anyway, for Christmas, because I've been getting my fishing stuff ready over the winter, and I've been tying flies. Like I said, I did fly tying videos for Country Sports TV. The kids bought me a hat, the Fish Whisperer. So this is my new fishing hat. So now I got a hat, I got to go fishing. So I intend to do some videos for Country Sports TV about fishing for the disabled, because I don't stand very well now. I've got no cartilage in my hips at all. It's just bone against bone and it hurts. But I can fish off a seat. I could take my wheelchair, but I couldn't get down there. I could drive, but the wife's normally got the car. So what I would do is I got my mobility scooter, and I'm going to hop on my mobility scooter. I found a way of putting the rods on and the nets, and I got a basket in the front, and that'll have all the cameras and the flies and all the bits and pieces that I need and the flask of coffee. I'm going to go fishing. That's why this video is called Gone Fishing. And I'll let you know how I get on. It might be this week, but I'm not sure. The weather is iffy, and my mobility scooter doesn't like the rain. The last thing I want is to get rain into the electrics. Anyway, this is Ian. Ian's POV, and I'm gone fishing. Bye-bye.